see. And then they put a nice English thing on it. That's great. Chivalry. So Gikkyo is sometimes referred to the philosophy of the Yakuza or the Yakuza themselves, but Ninkyo-do is the philosophy they espouse of like, fighting the strong and helping the weak, being noble outlaws. I mean, that's what they say.
Wow.
So the fact that you guys have brought Gikkyo here, I thought like you're pulling my leg. But that's pretty funny, man.
Not at all.
There we go.
It's also a fucking wonderful sake.
We should have.
How do we
Are we under
toast?
FCC regulations here?
No.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
I can use the F word.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're toasting to you today. It's your
Thank you.
publication week. So
Is it a week or
Thank you.
day?
Cheers.
Actually,
Tuesday. It's always on Tuesday.
It was yesterday.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's great.
Congratulations.
I mean,
Well, this is nice. It's very sweet.
Customarily, can we just shoot the whole thing? Or
No, you should not shoot the whole thing.
Especially you.
Come here.
No,
Don't dare me.
Remember the sake that is mentioned in the book called Onigoroshi, which is this really shitty sake.
Say that word again. Emphasis at the end.
Onigoroshi, which means like demon killer. That you can slug down. That is sold in juice box for 100 yen. I mean, even with inflation, it has still managed to sell it at the price of 100 yen. So that's the booze you have when everything else is closed and the and the kiosk in the police station is like the only thing that's open.
Well, what's the drinking culture in Japan? I mean, when I went to Korea, the soju. I mean, everyone was it was exactly what I thought it would be. Everyone was very normal and business. And then after a certain hour, where I was, there was just people windmilling about the street, dropping shots of soju and beer, and drinking these soju and beer things, which are incredibly disgusting. But after the first one, they're great.
So like I'm 56, which makes me the average age of a Yakuza now because nobody joins, right? So they're all old. My generation, like everybody drank. I mean, drinking was a part of the culture. But the younger generation, people in their 20s, they don't drink.
So when you say your generation, you mean your generation of Japanese people?
Yeah, my generation of Japanese people. So when I, started as a newspaper reporter, we all drank. I mean, everybody drank. I mean, you had to drink because the cops drank.
Yeah.
And there's always this pretext that when because they can't speak to you off the record because then they're violating the civil servants law. So the whole pretext of going out drinking with them is that you both get so drunk that clearly nobody actually discussed anything, right?
Yeah.
Nobody remembers what happened. You can't take notes either, so because it's not a formal interview. And so you drink all night, and then as you hop in your taxi to take you back, which the company provides because they don't want you to get arrested for drunk driving, then you have to write down everything before you pass out. So
it seems like a very good system.
It is a very good system.
Creates a certain liability of quotes.
I have the officers that were my sources. I had them all identified. There was one officer named I who would always start with a beer. Because that's a very Japanese thing to do. I don't know if they do that in Korea. It's always like toriaizu biru. You have a beer. Then you might have some sake. And then in his case, we would have some sake. And, he's trying to teach me about sake because he's very proud of Japan's, Japanese culture. And then we would have some wine. And then if it was a winter or autumn, he would give me a shot of whiskey because, it's cold out there.
God, they drink like Irish people.
Yeah, and then Irish people of Asia.
And then, and then I think he was from
less anti-Semitic.
He was from Kumamoto, which is southern Japan, and they're really like the toughest people in Japan, the Sicily of Japan. And my notes from that time, like I can look like the first 3 pages, like because I know that I'm going to pass out. I'm writing really fast, and then by the time you get to the 4th page, there's just this line going down.
How long did it take for you to start like secretly watering all of your drinks so that you could remember and they couldn't?
I never was able to do. But if we went to like when I got to the point where I could sort of choose the location where we were drinking, when I actually had information to provide, then I would say to the hostess, like, I'll just have the usual. And she knew the usual would be like, ginger ale with like some like gin, touched around the surface of the glass so you could have the gin smell, but no gin in it.
But they won't do on background or off the record because it's a violation of a civil code.
So the civil
no one ever does. This is on background.
So the civil servants law says, of course, it's on background, but you can't. It's always written according to sources close to the investigation. If there's this phrase in Japanese, sosa kankesha ni yoruto, that like you see in newspapers again and again and again. It's like, well, who are these people close to the investigation? Could it be the police?
Yeah.
Well, Jake, you come to join us while you're out here hawking a book, so we should probably mention the book and show folks the cover. It's the book that we have, not the one that we read necessarily. The Devil Takes Bitcoin. This is your 4th book. 3 other books. Can you kind of tie them all together? What is the through line in all these projects? And the thing that most people will perhaps recognize you for is Tokyo Vice, which eventually became an HBO show, which you were an executive producer on. But I don't know how involved you were with the production.
Yes, very handsome in that.
Really thin and handsome.
Am I bad to think that I am more handsome than the character?
Not at all. No.
The only person who agrees with that is Jessie Nakamoto, my partner of 5 years. She thinks I'm more handsome.
That's what she tells you. Yes. Yeah.
That's what she tells me.
She means that.
At least part of me is handsome enough for her, and that's good. So the 3 books are first is Tokyo Vice, and that is part of a memoir and part of what it's like to cover the police beat in Japan. And the second book, The Last Yakuza, is a history of the Yakuza told through the lives of several Yakuza bosses. So particularly one boss I named Saigo, I had to sort of make him a compendium of like 2 or 3 characters so you couldn't identify who was who. Because while I was writing the book, Japan did something really crazy, which is they eliminated the statute of limitations on murder. Oh. And they made it retroactive. Yeah. So I'd interviewed these people talking about, like 25 years ago, I got this fight and I killed a guy with a baseball bat and, we called off the body. Or, there was this kidnapping and we killed the wrong person. We thought this other Yakuza had been doing the kidnapping of Yakuza bosses. And so I was like, okay, well, now that some of these people who spoke to me on the record could go to jail because the laws have changed retroactively.
Sounds like a ripe opportunity for you to make a lot of money.
Or die.
Wait, is this the situation where the publisher asked you to go get releases?
Yes,
from the
So the publisher hated you.
Dumbest fucking thing I ever. Go get releases.
Or genius, depending on the outcome you're rooting for.
Oh, yeah. I mean, maybe they had a life insurance policy on me.
Yeah. You said no to that.
I said no to that, and that's one of the reasons I started publishing everything in France first, because it was just ridiculous. Dealing with American publishers is really hard, and there's so much lawyering up.
No editing, lots of lawyering.
No editing, lots of lawyering, and particularly Japan is seen as problematic by some people because there was this book called Memoirs of a Geisha, which they made into a movie. Well, even though Arthur Golden wrote it as fiction, he thanked one of his sources. And then since he wrote about things that he shouldn't have written about, the source, the actual geisha, sued him for defamation. And I think that they settled for a huge amount of money out of court.
In which jurisdiction?
In Japan, in the United States.
In the United States, right. Okay.
I mean, you can sue someone anywhere. And so I think that set this precedence, like, if you're going to write about, Japan and real people, like, you got to be careful.
Yeah. But there have been no lawsuits from...
No. No, there have been no lawsuits. But
on the Yakuza thing, I've seen you mention this in the past. You just mentioned it now. Well, they're this guy's headquarters, as if they do actually have like office buildings where there's the Yakuza office, right?
Yeah, I mean, but
it's the wildest. It's not like past the Genovese.
It's not the underworld. It's the overworld.
It's the overworld.
It's less than it used to be. I love this. The Yamaguchi-gumi used to have a Halloween party for the kids in the neighborhood. And so there was this Indian family in the neighborhood because it's kind of an international district, and I would sometimes go as Uncle Jake. And I think after a while they were quite clear that I was the journalist and not the uncle. But, this is Japan where we're all very fond of pretending that we aren't what we are.
I just want to point out that the Carroll Gardens neighborhood where I live in New York, where the Scotto family ran riot for a really long time, and where Al Capone got married around the corner from us. The Scotto family.
Joey Gallo lived over there too.
Joey Gallo lived over there, and also a little person who liked to walk around and collect things with his pet lion or tiger.
Joey Gallo had a tiger in his basement.
Yeah. The Yakuza were into that too. There was a
it's a universal mob thing.
They were like buying lions and stuff. They were like Sekine Gen, the serial killer who shows up in the first book, husband and wife team. He was selling lions and tigers to the Yakuza. That was one of his side businesses.
But the Scottos reliably at the funeral home that they run, because of course you run the funeral home. And
it's a good business when you kill people. Yeah.
That's efficiency.
They had the best Halloween party every year, reliably. Yeah.
So, I mean, what is the state of the Yakuza today in Japan? And maybe you could like paint a picture for us and like give us a sense of what the right analogy to, say, U.S. criminality might be.
There's none. Because, okay, so it's easiest to illustrate with this magazine, right?
Yeah.
So because they publicly exist and they have the right to exist because they are an organization, they had office buildings, they have business cards, and Japan, instead of outlawing their existence because they didn't have didn't have a RICO Act, and they only had only had plea bargaining. It was only introduced in 2019. It's very hard to dissolve these organizations. And so,
because no one can cop out on that, right?
And why would you cop out? I mean, here's the brilliant thing about how the Yakuza deal with about someone not flipping on them. So if you get arrested and you're in a Yakuza group, and they're very paternalistic, they're very organized. The Yamaguchi-gumi itself, which was founded in 1915, it had a pension plan. If you made it to like 65, you got a huge when you retired, they gave you a huge bonus, and that keeps loyalty. But they also provide your lawyer when you get arrested. And your lawyer, all the statements that you make to the police and everything that you've said and everything that you've signed, he takes back to headquarters. So they know whether you've been singing or not. And if you keep your mouth shut and you've gone to crime and you've done the crime for the organization, or maybe you're subbing for someone else who's actually did the dirty work, whatever that is, they will take care of your family. And your mistress too, because it's very understanding, right? That your family are not to be just the person you're married to. While you're in prison, and when you get out, you get a giant cash bonus, and you rise up in the organization. So you would have to be a total idiot to flip on your bosses.
So you have a business, they have business cards, they're essentially incorporated, they're above ground. Obviously, in the U.S., the old joke is, we're in the waste management business. That's what you see. And what is the official business that is the fake business that you get for the Yakuza?
Well, okay, so here these lovely guys are here, right? So they're attending the funeral of one of their bosses.
See a penis, really.
No, sorry. The penis enlargement ads are always part of these things. There's a funny story I'll tell you about that one later about how they got it. Yeah. But so, here they are. And of course, they're like, there's photographers who make their living sort of following these around when the guys are doing yet another penis enlargement thing. Here's a funeral. Here they are at a funeral. There's like these big ceremonies where all the Yakuza get together from like various factions. So the Yamaguchi-gumi has their city block in Kobe, which is huge. It's registered as a property of a corporation, which I think is called Kosan. And it lists on there the business objectives of the organization is rental offices, golf course management,
golf
course management,
parking lots.
Yes.
So 2 out of 3 we got Trump.
Yeah.
And real estate management.
Okay, 3 out of 4.
So those are the
those are
the ostensible things that they do.
Stakes.
And so they have always run a mixture of legitimate and illegitimate businesses. I mean, just like the mafia in that sense.
Yes, how you do it, right? Yeah.
So talent agencies, private detective agencies, construction, auditing firms. That's crazy, but the Yakuza are running an auditing firm because if you have a company, right? If you're playing the stock market and you're getting your company listed, you have to have you turn in your Kessan show, your financial statements, right? So you need someone to rubber stamp those things. So if you go to a legitimate auditing firm, they're going to be like, no way. So why not make your own? Yeah. And then all the other crooked companies are like, we'll please do our books. There was one company called Wing Partners that in the period of my life where I was doing a lot of corporate due diligence, which is the subject of my third book, Tokyo Noir. So the Yakuza front companies, the companies were doing illegitimate business or had Yakuza money, and they were mostly using Wing Partners. And Wing Partners was this auditing firm. And you would go to their webpage, and there's a picture of an empty office, and not a single person in the company is listed, which is just very bizarre for a Japanese company. So it's Wing Partners, auditing firms, and there's a little, like a couple things that they do, very, very bare bones webpage, but not a single photo of anyone. There's just an empty office.
It's such a weird thing with Japan because, you look in the news fairly recently, talking about booze in Japan, and you see about a month ago, the CEO of Suntory, which makes whiskey, and
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
they the CEO of Suntory had ordered some sort of CBD or something, had a tiny bit of THC, they thought, and he had to resign. And they are investigating him now. Don't know if they're going to prosecute him. And they are incredibly tight about these things. Yet the Yakuza has city blocks and they run all this stuff. And it seems like a permissive culture for these guys. But the Suntory guy looks like he might go to jail for having this tiny little bit of...
Well, I mean, no offense to the head of Suntory. He's such an asshole that, I mean, he had made so many enemies. I mean, I mean, I wouldn't say everybody hated him, but he was so overbearing and such an Ivy Leaguer... you know, braggart that he, you know, got a lot of ill will. So I think someone in his company set him up. And also, Suntory is a family company. He's not a member of the family, and it's been in the family for ages. And I think, you know, it was a sort of coup d'etat. I mean, he is unlucky in that sense.
Yeah. But what about the broader trajectory or nature of the criminal justice system, as Moynihan was alluding to?
So, you know, in Japan, the criminal justice system, which is also subject to this book, is really kind of, you know, the joke is presumed guilty until proven guilty.
Yeah.
I mean, and there is, I think one of the Minister of Justices under Abe once was asked about Carlos Ghosn, the head of Nissan.
Is he the one that escaped in the Viola case or
yeah,
something?
Yeah,
right?
Viola case. Yeah. Okay. Let's return to that section because I have a really funny story about that.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, Carlos Ghosn, head of Nissan, actually kind of a celebrity in Japan because he took this Japanese company off the brink of bankruptcy and he revived it. He was
the head of Peugeot before, right?
Yeah. And Renault sort of brought him in because they had a big shares of Nissan. He revived this company, and then Japan's, you know, after they finally legalized plea bargaining, the very first case they did was basically bust Carlos Ghosn's balls on petty charges.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm certain that he abused his power as any CEO did, but no Japanese CEO would ever have been tried for that. I think his crime was Renault wanted to make Nissan a French company.
That's right.
They wanted to recast it and make it a completely French company. And Abe Shinzo and Suga, his number two, were like, fuck no. Like, we'll just take Carlos Ghosn down. And they actively were like, you know, who can bring us the head of Carlos Ghosn? And someone in Nissan was like, I can.
Yeah. Was he saying, was Abe saying that publicly?
No. But in the plea bargaining case, right? So it's a plea bargaining case. So this guy, I think his name was Nada, the guy who, you know, ratted out Ghosn, and you know, because he was also doing some illegal stuff, and did the plea bargain with the prosecutors. So the liaison between Nissan and the prosecutors was an ex-prosecutor who was also Shinzo Abe's lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
So if you wanted this, if you're a conspiracy theorist, and I am, and when it comes to Japan, it's very clear that what was going on is like Carlos Ghosn is if we get rid of Carlos Ghosn, we can stop Nissan from becoming a non-Japanese company. We don't want it to be a French company.
Mm-hmm. And Viola case.
Oh, Viola case. Okay. So anyway, Carlos Ghosn is not an idiot, right? So he gets arrested, thrown in jail, spurious charges. He tries to he gets out. He calls a press conference. They arrest him again.
Yes. Yeah.
So Carlos Ghosn is beginning to get a sense of what the criminal justice system is. And then I'm trying to get an interview with Carlos, and through one of his intermediaries, and I knew someone who was Carlos Ghosn's secretary for a long time as well. I'm like, you know, Carlos, you should really talk to Mark Karpeles, the head of Mt. Gox, who was, you know, arrested and thrown in jail for a year on very weak charges as well.
Also French.
Yeah. You know, you two would have a lot in common, and so they talk to each other. And I think Mark, you know, gave him a very bleak view of the system. Anyway, so he finally agrees to interview me on background because he doesn't want to be thrown in jail again, and he's like, Where can we meet? Like, the prosecutors follow me around all the time, even though I'm on bail. And I've said, I said, trust me, Carlos, I'll take care of it. So I know people in the Grand Hyatt because I'd done some work for them before. So I managed to get the French Kitchen, which is the restaurant on the second floor, which I thought was a funny joke because he's French, right? So we met in the French Kitchen, and then I told the people, like, we're going to have the smoking section. Your job is to keep everyone out. And they're like, done. You know, so we had me and Carlos and one of his daughters. I think her name's Naomi, but I forget. So I'm sitting with Carlos, and writing up his story for a French magazine. He kind of wants to know what the angle is, because I believe that he's essentially innocent. That he's been railroaded. And the first thing he asked me, and Carlos is pretty pompous. I mean, he's not a likable guy. And he asked me, like, so what is your article, the brunt of your article? And I said, well, I'm basically saying that, that you're the victim of political machinations. I mean, that is my own opinion. It's a court of an opinion piece. But I want to ask you some questions and outline the circumstances and events that happened here. And he said, well, how does it start? And I said, oh, it starts like this. Carlos Ghosn is an arrogant asshole, but that doesn't mean he's guilty. and he doesn't look amused, but his daughter really laughs. So anyway, after this long interview, he says, he drops this on me. He says, like, John Lesher, the executive producer of your TV series, is interested in making a movie about my life. And seeing as that you're in the process of turning your life into a TV series, what do you think my odds are? Do you think it would be good for film? And I said, well, I'm not a producer. And I said, but Carlos, we have a fundamental problem here. And I says, I don't know if you realize this, but the Japanese justice system works like this. Once you're indicted, it's a 99% conviction rate. Mm-hmm. I mean, most of the time, 50% of almost all cases, the prosecutors throw out. They don't indict because they hate to lose. But once they've indicted, they're unstoppable. Nobody
had been indicted.
He had been indicted.
Yeah.
And I said, none of the prosecutors want to be the 1% of losers. And I said, in addition to this, even if miraculously you are found not guilty on a few charges, the prosecutors in Japan can't appeal. There's no real concept of double jeopardy. There's supposed to be, but there's not. As a matter of fact, every time the prosecutors lose, 9 times out of 10, they're going to appeal, so you'll be tried again. And then, depending upon what that verdict is, they'll probably appeal all the way up to the Supreme Court. So the problem is there's no conclusion to your story, because it will go on and on and on. The sort of audience will be left in limbo, and that's not very satisfying. So that is the obstacle. And he looked at me in the eye, and he sort of, with a twinkle, and he said, don't worry, there will be a surprise ending.
Oh, wow.
And it totally went over my head.
Yeah. And it was only, months later?
I was the last person to interview him. He stepped out of his apartment. He got these American sort of mercenary soldiers of fortune to smuggle him out in like a giant case, viola case, or a speaker case.
Speaker case or something like that. Yeah.
Basically a musical instrument case through a smaller airport, out of Japan into Lebanon, and he walked away.
Yeah, because he's a Lebanese citizen too, right? Yeah.
That's tremendous.
I think the story is incredible.
And he got the TV show, right?
They did make a TV show. I don't think Lesher produced it, but they did make a TV series about his thing. I don't think it was very successful.